the Daily Wire co-CEO, Jeremy Boring, has stepped down officially as the co-head of the company. Now, it's important to note that he's still like part owner of the company, and he's supposedly staying on board as in an advisory role. But Axios broke this story the other day where basically he has come out publicly and said that he's going to be stepping down from all of his co-CEO duties. And he's just going to be focusing on hosting his behind-the-scenes show with the Daily Wire and finishing up the Pendragon cycle, which is the TV show that he's directing, and also like being an advisor, creative advisor to the Daily Wire. And instantly, once this news broke, there was all types of conspiracy theories, or I should just say theories at this point, about why he decided to step down. And there was a gentleman by the name of Ian Carroll. I don't know if you guys have heard about this guy. He was recently on Joe Rogan. And Ian Carroll kind of made this video talking about inside sources telling him that Jeremy Boring has basically run the company into the ground, that they're kind of like struggling financially now. They're trying to sell it off. They tried to sell it off to Tim Pool in like an all stock deal or something like that. Now, I don't know if
they were trying to buy Tim Pool. That was
no, they were trying to sell it to Tim Pool.
No, he retracted
according to this video, and I think he only retracted it because on the IRL show, Tim Pool basically came out and said, this is complete BS. It's complete lies. He got it totally wrong.
Yeah, so what he said was they were trying to buy Tim Pool by offering him Daily Wire stock.
Well, in this video, he said that they were trying to sell it off to Tim Pool. But basically, I don't know if you guys know much about Ian Carroll, but he is a very anti-Israel type of news commentator. He doesn't seem to like, Jewish people all that much. And basically, he's coming out and very happily spreading rumors, because every other sentence in this video was allegedly about the reason why Jeremy Boring's stepping down. And then you had Brett Cooper, who dropped a tweet of Jimmy Fallon kind of like smiling slyly at this announcement. And that kind of like fanned the flames of like, so it was Jeremy Boring that she had like a falling out with and all this other stuff. Now, the reason that this is important is because Daily Wire is the biggest independent conservative news network out there. They've got lots of different shows. They make tons of money. I think that they say that they pull in $200 million in profit a year. They have $1 billion valuation. And for a couple of guys who just do like YouTube videos, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are asking about the ramifications of Jeremy Boring stepping down, because he also runs Jeremy's Razors and like a couple other kind of like ancillary like side businesses that are kind of entwined with
side hustles,
Daily Wire, side hustles.
Pendragon.
Exactly. Yeah, well, we're going to get into Pendragon. So like the big thing seems to be that the reason that all these financial trouble rumors are spreading is because Jeremy Boring was kind of at the forefront of pushing Daily Wire into being like a full-blown Hollywood competitor. It started off with them purchasing movies that they would then release under the Daily Wire banner. They started up their own children's programming network with Bent Key. And now they're trying to get into like the Netflix kind of original series game with the Pendragon cycle, which is basically their version of Game of Thrones, but set in Arthurian legend. And it's been a passion project of Jeremy Boring's. He wrote it, directed it, produced it, all this other stuff. There seems to be some confusion about whether or not there's Snow White movies still happening. But it seems that basically Jeremy got them into this content production, Hollywood arms race type thing that their core business can't really sustain. And that seems to be why he's like pulling back. Other people are just saying like, hey, like he's kind of sick of all like the BS that goes along with the day-to-day business stuff. And he just wants to focus on creative stuff like, making more movies, making more TV shows, stuff like that. So Rob, I want to throw this to you. What's your take on this news that Jeremy Boring has stepped down from Daily Wire?
Well, I've always, I'm not their target audience, but I've always thought that they, had interesting content. I mean, I watch Ben Shapiro. He's obviously a smart guy. And I found it really interesting. I did a show I was telling you on my own podcast where when they became a movie distributor, they picked up Run, Hide, Fight as their first movie. and they had a really interesting model. And I was interested in seeing what the Daily Wire did from a distribution standpoint for independent cinema. And I thought for a while there, they did a great job. The problem is, if you're not like, I'm sure Jeremy Boring, I'm surely you nailed it. When you try and make a TV show and you're not a TV show company and you haven't worked in that, the costs, they rise very, very quickly. And that's the reason everybody thinks, they can make movies. But when you're trying to do, like, they didn't start small. They just, we're going to do our Game of Thrones with the Arthurian legends. Oh, okay. That's just dive right in. The Moonies tried to do that with a movie called Inchon, and it didn't work out for them very well. But I do think, look, I'm a big proponent of different voices. And I think the Daily Wire, look, there's a lot of personalities on the Daily Wire that I'm not, like Matt Walsh, I'm not a big fan of, even though I appreciate the movies that he's made because he's gone out and done them. But I think that having a conservative home for people is important. Just like I think I think that you might not like those people, but I do appreciate their level of intellect, and I might disagree with them, but I think that they do provide compelling content that even if you're not on their side of the fence, to listen to it and consider it, and I think that that's something that the Daily Wire offers, and I would like to see it continue. But with him leaving, I'm sure, look, it either comes down to, it's either about money or some kind of impropriety or both. And I'm sure that, look, rather than have a scandal happen, like you said, it's a $1 billion valuation's nothing to sneeze at. And having him step down and keeping the channel free of scandal or whatever is probably something that was prudent to do. And he's still, he hasn't cut ties. I don't know what happened with Brett Cooper. I don't know why you would want to lose your fresh-faced girl in her early 20s that's a conservative. I mean, and take your feelings out of it, but she's somebody that they should have done everything they could to hold on to. Candace Owens has become a complete crackpot, but she's somebody that they should have kept. And I think whatever happened there was a mistake because, like,
pride happened, Rob.
What's that?
Pride. It was Jeremy Boring's pride. She wanted more money, and he didn't like the fact that talent was asking for anything.
Well, there you go. I mean, but I do think, look, we need to learn how to listen to all voices in America. And I do believe that not all ideologies are good ideologies, but we have forgotten how to talk to one another. And I think having various outlets, and people should have a healthy, as Chris Gore says, media diet. And I mean, that's why I watch a great variety of programming on YouTube, because I like to hear different voices. I'm curious to hear what people think and why they think it. And I think the people on that channel do a pretty good job. Now, you might hate their guts, but at least they have the strength and courage of their convictions, such as they may be. So I think I would not like to see the Daily Wire go away and be destabilized.
I agree.
Well, Brian, famously, Steven Crowder conned the term big con, or AKA big conservatism. And a big part of that was when he was in negotiations, with Jeremy Boring, because Daily Wire wanted to bring his show into their network. And Steven Crowder very publicly aired all of his grievances against this contract that Jeremy had, written up for him. And it seemed like a personal betrayal. And, Jeremy Boring came out publicly and kind of went through the contract and explained the reasoning behind all the different clauses. But that was kind of like the first time that, like, a big name on the right side of the spectrum kind of called Jeremy Boring out. And he's been embroiled in these controversies with talent, like you mentioned, with Brett Cooper and stuff like that. So what's your take? Why do you think Jeremy Boring stepped down as co-CEO?
I think it was prudent to do so. He still owns, part of the business, and people are turning on him, and rightfully so. Someone in the comments said, so Steven Crowder was right. Yeah, I mean, at least partially. They don't respect their talent. Jeremy Boring specifically has this mentality that he literally calls himself lowercase God King. At first it was a joke, but he is an egomaniac, dude. And for 25 years, what did that guy say? He wanted to be an actor. He wanted to make movies. So this guy takes a profitable business that essentially is people sitting in front of webcams talking about politics and their opinions. And he makes it so, and he's such a narcissist. He makes it all about his ambitions, and he discounts everything the people that built the company did for him. No one is a fan of Jeremy Boring. People aren't a fan of Brett Cooper, of Matt Walsh, which I'm not like a huge fan. I don't like Matt Walsh. I think he's sort of a dickhead, but I do. Yeah, he is sort of a dickhead. But I like his movies. I don't like Matt Walsh, but I like his movies. But additionally, like even Ben Shapiro, we love him or hate him, right? However you feel about the guy, he's the reason people watch that. Candace Owens before she was let go. So he has never realized that his stock, like what is valuable in his company, is not the name Daily Wire or Jeremy Boring. No one gives a crap about Jeremy Boring. I did that for you, Odin. No one cares about Jeremy Boring. They care about the rest of the talent that the Daily Wire has contracts with. But Jeremy Boring doesn't take that talent seriously. He doesn't see that the entire brand is dependent on that talent. So the second someone goes, I need more money, or I need more time, or I need more control over my show, or my social media accounts, or whatever, like Brett Cooper, he goes, who are you, you disgusting child? Move along. I will replace you with your producer. And now their show goes from 500,000 views on average to 15,000 views on average. That's insane. And it's not like it happened once with Brett Cooper. Like this is a pattern for Jeremy Boring. And Steven Crowder only brought that, I think he brought that to light. Like he showed people who Jeremy Boring was. They not only lowballed him, but they disrespected him. They disrespected someone who should have been a peer. They should have been not a lower than, not some employee that you can hire. And if you did the math on what it would cost for Steven to produce that content annually, like he's not making remotely enough money for his time. But so they lowballed him, they disrespected him. And yeah, should Steven have brought out those tapes and showed it publicly? Maybe not. But dude, Jeremy Boring's response was so, I can't believe you would do this to me, Steven. He's such a fake, disingenuous asshole. I'm glad he stepped down, but let's not forget that fake, disingenuous asshole still owns Daily Wire. So you're supporting Daily Wire, you're supporting Jeremy Boring. And let's be real, the step down is just a maneuver. It's a maneuver to take a little bit of heat off Daily Wire so he can keep running shit in the background like Pendragon.
Tom Connors Jr., what's your take on why Jeremy Boring stepped down? And this is relevant because Daily Wire, they're a big YouTube company. They're a big media company. So, it's almost like something that other YouTubers can aspire to achieve because they were kind of like homegrown type stuff. So what impact do you think this has on their business?
Well, I mean, I guess at one point you become mainstream, and I guess in some ways Daily Wire has with the movies that they've been putting out, with a couple of them anyway. Now, the other ventures in there, like you pointed out, have not been working out for them, which is sad because this is, it was something that was set up for, voices that weren't being heard. But this was also at a time when the media was so left leaning, which it still is, don't get me wrong. But I mean, it felt like you had 20 outlets for left media and nothing for right-wing media, right? Like you were just bombarded with it. So, I mean, I don't know if it's so much more the money that was wasted and lost and spent in the relationships that you guys were just speaking of. I know very little about this situation. I know very little about the Daily Wire to really comment on it, and even Sadie's barking because she knows I don't know much about it. So
don't talk about Steven!
But no, I mean, I guess if anything, you just kind of get ahead of yourself. Money gets in the way. The Daily Wire probably had a boost there for a while, like I said, and then it fell off. And it sounds like Jeremy got, let his head get too big and spent too much money. I even saw this Snow White thing. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this just makes no sense.
That never got made.
If,
right?
if it was a troll,
No.
it made sense. Not to
Yeah.
actually make the movie, but to come out with like trailer like they're going to, just as a troll.
Exactly.
That makes complete
Like
sense.
as a little
troll.
skit. Same thing with that one movie they did, Lady Ballers, whereas like this might work as a skit, but I don't know as a whole movie. And you're kind of going against what the whole idea of what this should be, instead of it being, you know, all about right-wing entertainment. It should just be like family and neutral entertainment, because wasn't that what this was supposed to be in the beginning?
Yeah,
The
and some
Daily
of the
Wire?
stuff they bought was very family friendly. Like my church showed one of their movies, their superhero movie. I forgot what it's called. There wasn't even. It's not even a religious movie. It's just family friendly. So that was the way to go. You're completely right.
Oh, the Hyperion.
Yeah, right. The Hyperion.
Yeah, and that brings me to you, Odin, because I want to ask you. So, Daily Wire's initial foray into, I guess scripted narratives, was in direct response to how woke Disney was going, right? And so they wanted to offer like an alternative to Hollywood, and they start off with the Miramax model of basically purchasing independent movies and then releasing them on their Daily Wire Plus subscription service. And they kind of made headway with Gina Carano after she got fired from The Mandalorian, and they kind of picked her up and made a movie with her. And then they started getting into original productions. I believe Snow White was going to be a fully produced movie, but then once Disney kind of course corrected, I think that they might have dropped that entirely, especially now that Brett Cooper is no longer with the company. But the Pendragon cycle is basically their first big original series, and Jeremy Boring is neck deep into that. Like that's been his baby for like 25 years, essentially, because it's been a passion project of his. But it does seem like their strategy of being an alternative Hollywood has been fumbled, and I think a lot of that might be because of Jeremy's kind of like vision for what they want to be. So I want to get your take on that. Do you think that the Daily Wire should continue trying to be this alternative Hollywood, or is this just Jeremy's, ego forcing this company to spend a lot of money to have him fulfill his dream of being an actor, writer, director, auteur?
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things where they probably could still go in that direction, but they need someone new in the creative space, because it's clear that Jeremy Boring isn't it. I'm wondering if that might actually be the reason why. I think he was probably pressured, based just on just from the outside. I have no inside knowledge of this, so I could be completely wrong on this. But my instinct tells me that he was likely pressured because they were looking at the financials, saying, "Look, we're making a lot of money, right? We have very successful YouTube channels, we have a very successful platform, but you're just going off spending." Right, I think that they even said early on what they were going to commit to, $100 million or so of content. Yeah,
Just
for
for
BentKey,
BentKey,
for BentKey, right? And that was buying content to put on the platform, creating their own original content as well. And I would be surprised if a huge portion of that, or additionally more money, was being put forward more specifically the Pendragon cycle, because that is a passion project of his. So I would not be surprised if he has just been ballooning that budget, has just been spending a ton of money on it. And if we're honest, BentKey has really, I don't think, has really been all that successful. Most people who have a subscription to the Daily Wire are likely not actually using BentKey. They're likely just using the main platform or other things, right? It's good
That's
to have
funny.
those
I don't even know what
alternatives.
BentKey is.
Yeah,
And I'm a
BentKey is
subscriber.
their...
Well, Brian,
BitKey is their family channel, essentially.
That's so weird. I have no idea what that is.
Because
They also spent about $15 million on legal stuff during the COVID restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, that was good.
That was money well spent, because they got a
yeah.
win, and it was also like a big. It was a big move that a lot of people, especially more of a conservative side of person, like could actually be like, "Oh, I fully support this, and I fully endorse what y'all are doing."
But that's not
here.
making them any money. That was
No.
like
Where
that
did
was
they
like
come up-
pure.
Where did they come up with the term BentKey?
So
I mean,
BentKey-
it sounds like an app for a lockpick service.
Well,
or
very
something.
appropriate for this conversation, because it actually came from Jeremy Boring. It's I think referring to either his theater troupe or something from his childhood when he was growing up.
It was his childhood theater troupe.
Childhood
Because,
theater
man,
troupe.
when I think of the term BentKey, I think of children's programming.
Yeah, he literally
makes total sense.
has a bent key around his neck. Like I think that he's had that forever, and then once they launched it, it's now like a thing that you notice even more so. it's just very clear that his ego, I think, has just gotten to the best of him. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he got pressured out because he was just wasting a ton of money. So obviously he still has influence. He still has some creative control in some regards. But I think that him specifically stepping down as CEO means he has, I guess, less ability to greenlight projects. And I think that's probably what they were like, yeah, we just can't have you doing this anymore, because he lets his ego, he lets his emotion drive his decision making and not actual business. And I think that it's likely like they were looking at the sheet saying, look, we're still making money, but you're cutting into our profits by quite a bit. We can't really expand anymore. We can't really do anything else. And Benke has not proven to be successful, I think, in any way. Again, they've picked up some good movies, but in the end, it's not nearly enough to become an actual alternative to Hollywood, especially with the direction that they're going in, with all the money likely, or a huge portion of the money going to Pendragon Cycle, which I don't think is, I mean, obviously I have to see it first before I make a judgment, but I have a lot of doubts about it.
I
just think-
profitable.
I think the problem that they have over there at Daily Wire is that there's too many people like me out here where I'm going, I think I'm going to go watch a new movie or entertainment show today. I want something new. The first thing that pops in my head is not the Daily Wire to go look for new content. In fact, it never even crosses my brain, because it's just like, I don't know. It's just they should just stay in their lane.
Well, that's what I was saying, is like their only successes have been is What Is a Woman and the other
Am I
one was
Racist?
Am I Racist? And those because they were cheap to make.
Yeah.
And they made a buttload of money, and they're probably the only thing keeping the company afloat right now, to be
Although
honest with
Am
you.
I Racist was like double the budget of Am I a Woman? What is it? Woman?
Yeah, but it still made it made
but
like
think about how
2-3 times
successful-
as much.
Exactly.
And I haven't watched either of those because I think Matt Walsh is a dick. Okay,
Yeah,
I just
he is a
can't
dick.
stand the dude.
And he knows that too. Like he
Yeah.
leans into that quite a
He's
bit.
such a dick.
You guys shouldn't play video games because they're going to make you go murder somebody.
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
okay,
Shut
Tipper
up,
Gore,
Matt.
Shut the fuck up. You know,
God.
it's just like it's
God, what an
just
idiot.
stupid shit like that. Just
By
drives
the
me
way,
crazy.
an industry friend of mine is watching this show and just sent me something interesting. That Jeremy Boring served as the executive director of the Friends of Abe, a low-profile networking organization for Hollywood conservatives founded by Gary Sinise. Of course, Gary Sinise does great work for veterans.
He does.
Boring refused to give the Internal Revenue Service access to the section of the organization's website that would identify its members, saying such access was not required by federal law. And then he ended up running that into the ground, the Friends of Abe. So he has, I guess, a history of this kind of thing. But what I find interesting about on a larger level, user-generated content on YouTube, like what we're doing right now, has totally eclipsed all of legacy media. It is made irrelevant. They still haven't quite grasped. I still have people asking me, they think I'm nuts. Next month, it will be my 10th year on YouTube from when John Schnepp first said, hey, come be on AMC Heroes.
Holy moly.
So it's like I've watched a decade. At first, I wasn't paying much attention. I would just show up. I didn't even realize I was on a YouTube show practically. I just would go to the studio, sit down and talk comic book movies, and I would leave. I wasn't even watching much YouTube. But what's happened is people like the Daily Wire, they started out being user-generated content, a place where conservatives could go. And then everybody wants to expand and become a giant media company because the money's rolling in. But they don't have the skill set and they don't have the people to build the kind of infrastructure needed to make, say, a Game of Thrones. But everybody thinks they can do it. And so they do these things that become folly. I mean, I think the only person that's really been able to do it effectively is Mr. Beast. And that's because he spent a long time. I mean, it took him a long time, and he developed an infrastructure of people that knew how to make things. But I think that's what's happening with a lot of these companies is they want to. There's all these delusions of grandeur that everybody has. Both Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring wanted to make movies and TV shows. That's where they came from. And then they were given a platform on YouTube to do these kinds of things. But without being surrounded by people who really know production, you always wind up having these collapses. We see them happen over and over and over again.
Yeah, and the thing is that someone like Mr. Beast, he doesn't care about profit. So like he'll just like spend whatever it takes to make the content. But when it comes to like what Daily Wire's mission was, I was always critical of them because I was like, why aren't you making like the $3 to $10 million like low budget 80s style action movies that's all masculine energy, like, you know, it's just buff dudes blowing shit up with hot chicks on their arms and stuff
Hell
like
yeah,
that.
brother.
Like fill that void that Hollywood was refusing to fill at the time.
Yeah.
You know, counter programming type stuff. Like that would have been huge if they had done that. But instead they were just kind of like doing what Hollywood was doing, but like in a lighter style, right? So it's like, okay, we still have female main character action heroes who can destroy a 300-pound man, you know, but it's on the conservative streaming service as opposed to, like, you know, something like Disney Plus. So I was always kind of critical about that. But you know what I'm not critical about, guys, is super chats. But before we get to super chats, I want to thank Robert Meyer Burnett for being here today. I wish you could stay longer, but you have a big Hollywood interview to do, so we don't want to keep you. Is there anything you'd like to say in terms of final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
You can find me on YouTube at the Burnett Work. It's been hard for me the last week. I've been finishing my audio drama, True Noir, which you can get at truenoir.co. And there's some interesting news on that front coming soon. But yeah, find me over there on the Burnett Work. And tomorrow we have Let's Get Physical Media. I'm doing a Robservations today. I am going to, I will be going to Portland. I work with, I do a thing I've been doing for 8 years called Crisis Medicine Tactical Casualty Care, where I'm working with a former Green Beret and current ER doctor to create. We've done a whole series about providing pre-hospital care in active violent events, and this is the 8th year I've been shooting stuff for it. So I work with special operators and ex-military and current SWAT members. It's really fun. You can find that at Crisis Medicine online. And then CinemaCon is the week after. Coming to Vegas, Matthew.
Superman trailer.
I know. Or maybe they'll show the movie. Who knows?
Oh, I'd be so mad if they did.
I think they're. Maybe.
No, shut up. Don't
Wow.
tell me that.
You never know.
We got to talk later on about that documentary I'm making too. Superman.
Yeah,
related.
yeah. You know,
Superman
I
Returns.
watched your Voyager documentary the other day.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, and I started your Enterprise documentary, but I had to go. Those are really good.
Thanks, bro. I'm doing one on Superman Returns. I know you did the behind the scenes, so
Dude, I got 1,500 hours of footage that no one's ever seen.
please communicate with me on this. Oh my
You should
God,
You
Rob.
should talk to Brian Singer.
I don't know Brian. I know you.
talk
I don't
to-
know Brian
He'll
Singer.
talk to you.
Hey, just talk to Brian Singer. He'll talk.
If you're
Yeah,
doing
Brian
All right,
Singer's
I'll
not
message
doing
him, see what
anything.
happens.
Yeah.
he'll definitely talk to you about Superman Returns. Yes.
All right.
All right. Well, listen, it was great. Thank you for having me, but I'm sorry I have to go out early. I'm interviewing the costume designer of Anora. So that'll be fun.
So
Mike,
great.
you
Yeah,
watch
like
the super chat, Red.
Have fun.
So, all right, guys. Thanks for having me. And it's always a
Rob.
pleasure. All right.
See you, Rob.
See you guys later.
Hi, Rob.
God
Good
bless.
seeing you.